By the way, everybody, we're videoing our meeting here. This is our camera. It's got a mic in it. It picks up everything in the room. And so when you talk, it will hear you. And also that picture is part of the camera. So, and, okay, we're good, Willie. So, and we've had a little bit of video, technical, audio, and camera problems. Other than that, everything's great. So, welcome to Saturday Night Live Life Recovery Meeting, and we're here to try to help all of you that's here and all of you that's out there watching us in video land. And Tommy said that he's going to be in a community room showing us on a big screen where he's at. So anyway, hi everybody in Tommy's place. I'm waiting right here. Oh, you hear somebody come downstairs. So anyway, tonight we're going to be dealing with step 2, and that is we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. How about that? Sanity. Everybody in favor of some sanity? Yep. All right. So how about if we just do a little breathing exercise to help us be open to some sanity. How about that? I don't know about you, but I need it. How about that? So I like this one breathing technique is that you breathe in twice. That may sound a little strange, but you breathe in like this through your nose, and then you breathe in again and fill your lungs even more, and then you blow out through your mouth. Now everybody try it. We want to do that at least 3 times. It's even better if you put your hand over your heart. One more time, because I need it. That feels better for me. How about you? Yep. Yeah. Okay. So, anyway, thanks for being here. This is a place of recovery, whether you're online or here in person. We welcome everyone. We are a faith-based recovery, but you don't have to be interested in the faith aspect of this meeting. As long as you're interested in recovery, you're welcome here. We believe that if you come in and we help you, then you may be a little more open to the faith aspect of it. So, but that's where we're at. So you're welcome. Welcome here. We're going to be talking about out of step 2, which I've already read. One of the parts that we're going to be having out of the Life Recovery Bible, which is a 12-step Bible, come to believe, out of Romans 1:8 through 20. And so we're going to be talking specifically about coming to believe, and we're talking about as it is in step 2 is we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. I'm going to be talking about later about moving from thriving to moving from surviving to thriving, and 4 steps to start living your life in process. Because step number 2 in particular here is it talks about process. Okay, process. Now everybody loves process, right? But process is very important because a magical thinking or fantasy thinking is that we think everything should be instantaneous. We're kind of in a microwave lifestyle. We want everything instant. But the fact of it is, all growth is a process. All healing is a process. All recovery is a process. And hopefully, by the time we get through with this, we will come along in that. So, I wanted to share a few thoughts, quotes, and questions. And basically, it's I've got quite a few thoughts here and a few quotes. So, are you ready for this? How's the temperature in here? I came in, it was cold, and now I'm feeling rather warm, but I've been kind of focused on how's the temperature, you guys? Okay. Mostly. You started off like this. You wasn't for sure, but okay, end up good, all right. Okay, so, a few thoughts and quotes. All right, what we have here at Saturday Night Live, we want you to, to take the best of whatever we share and then just leave the rest, okay? Not everything connects with everybody all the time, but we want you to go ahead and connect, try to connect with it and take the best that will work for you. How's that sound? Is that all right? All right. Also, we're interested in process, not just perfection. Okay. We want progress, not perfection. Another quote is, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Have you ever heard that quote before? The unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates supposedly said that. And so and what we want you to do here at Saturday Night Live, and what recovery is all about, is for you to examine yourself and to make those adjustments that will help you grow and develop, mature, get better, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Step 2, one of the statements I have down here, only God can restore me to sanity. How about you? Yes? All right. Now this is a kind of an unusual quote, but this was one that I thought that I've shared this in the past, and this is from Spinoza. I don't know if anybody have ever heard of this philosopher, but he said this: emotion, which is suffering, ceases to be suffering as soon as we form a clear and precise picture of it. Shall I read that again? It's kind of a mouthful, isn't it? Okay. Emotion, which is suffering, ceases to be suffering as soon as we form a clear and precise picture of it. Anybody have any thoughts on that? John, would you go ahead and take it down a degree in here? Yeah. Thank you. No thoughts? Anybody want to speculate what we're talking about here? Or would you just rather me say what I think it's saying? So, starts off with emotions, which is suffering. Wouldn't you agree that our other than physical pain, most of our suffering is having to do emotionally? Wouldn't you agree with that? Yes. And so, and I really thought this kind of ties in with this step 2 here. So emotion, which is suffering, ceases to be suffering. So normally what we're suffering about is something that we're warring in our brain or in our heart, right, about stuff. Internal conflict, or we think that somebody should be different than we think they should be. They should act different, be different, and if they'd straighten up, my life would be better. Sometimes we have that kind of sick thinking, right? Right? And so, but when we get it ceases to be suffering as soon as we form a clear and precise picture of it. As soon as we accept reality the way that it is, then we're able to actually start to get better. Because if you're living in a non-reality, how's that going to work out for you? Because a non-reality would be a lie, wouldn't it? Yep. So you wouldn't be living in the truth, you'd be living in a lie. And how's that going to work out for you? So if you want to if you choose to live by the truth, you would then be wanting to live in reality. So when you get a clear and precise picture of it, then that means you start to get clarity. Does that make sense?
Yep.
When you're confused, emotionally dysregulated, anybody familiar with that term? Emotionally dysregulated? You get fuzzy-headed, overwhelmed, you're spinning out of control, you're in a state of rage or anger, or you can't think clearly, you're thinking things going on, but you're thinking, you're extremely, maybe even, I don't know why I'm thinking this but extremely paranoid about stuff, your head's spinning, and that means things, you're dysregulated. That means, well, biologically and neurologically, what that means is your heart is in a particular rhythm, and your brain is in a particular rhythm, and they're not in the same rhythm. Does that make sense? And we don't really realize, but when we go into a calm state, we get in a peaceful state, we get regulated, which means we get synchronized mentally and emotionally. That's what we did a while ago when we breathed and we put our hand over our heart. We took a few moments, we breathed, and we helped ourselves become more emotionally regulated. Does that make sense? Okay? So that's kind of what we started off with. So when we have a clear and precise picture of it, then this suffering, because when we start getting clear, when we become able to have some peace, then that emotional trauma or fuzziness or overwhelmedness begins to start to dissipate. Does that make sense? Does that help anything? Or did I say so much that it just made it worse?
Muddied the waters.
Muddied waters? Okay, so let's go on. I got several others. Shall I go forward? Too much? Shall I stop? Okay. All right, William James is the father of psychology, and he said this: the greatest revolution in our generation is the discovery that human beings, by changing their inner attitude of their mind, can change the outer aspects of their life. What do you think about that one? Ring true with you? The greatest revolution in our generation is the discovery that human beings, by changing their inner attitude in their minds, can change the outer aspects in their life.
So would you say perception is everything? Does that tie into that?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, it's perception. Your perception determines your belief structure. But the question is, I don't know exactly how to say this. It depends on, our perception is based on our past experiences, and also, well, here, I heard this quote today. Hopefully I can say it. Our daily actions act out our deepest beliefs, or we could call perceptions. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we can have messed up perceptions, and then that causes us to think, feel, and act out on those perceptions. All right? That's the reason why choosing healthy people to be around, healthy information that you're involved in, changing people, places, and things that helped us to get dysregulated. You know what I'm talking about? People, places, and things that help us get dysregulated. Should I say that one more time? When we choose the people and places and things to dysregulate us, because some people, I'm not saying anybody that's here or listen to me, but some people like chaos in their life. Well, they may not totally like it, but they're familiar with it, so they seem to choose it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Hello. How are we doing so far? Have I redeemed myself any? Okay. So, should I? Well, I'm going to skip that one and come back to it. John Bradshaw. John Bradshaw is, he's passed away. He's been dead for probably 15 or 20 years. I really liked John Bradshaw. He said this, and he was speaking primarily about overeating disorder. But you know, well, let's just read the quote. He said that almost everybody who grows up in a dysfunctional family has an eating disorder. Or you could even leave out eating and say disorder. Right? Now, the question is, what is the definition of disorder? We've talked about this quite a bit. That's not saying that we have a mental health issue, even though mental health uses that terminology of disorder. Disorder is saying that you have a disorder, a pattern of thought. In other words, your thinking is screwed up, to put it bluntly. How about that? And if not all of us, as we have grown up, we've had trauma and we've had issues, and John Bradshaw talked about dysfunctional families that would definitely cause disorder and would cause trauma, which would cause disorder, because when you have trauma, they say that your brain is actually altered. Okay? It changes the structure of your brain. So there is mental or brain altering. And so your brain is, then it alters your pattern of thought. And one of the uniqueness that is the different, that makes each one of us unique is the way that we think. And none of us go through our brain the same way. Does that make sense? We have two hemispheres. We have 7 primary layers. But according to Dr. Leaf said here some time back, she said we have 200 different parts of our brain. So, and how we go through our brain and in the order we pass through our brain, because we don't go from just front to back or back to front or side, you know, we go through it in our own unique way. And when we have trauma, from what I understand, that can alter how we think. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. And and that's the reason why it's so important to be able to deal with our life's traumas. Now, some of the issues we deal with here at Saturday Night Live is drugs, alcohol, cutting, sex abuse, gambling, overeating, you just name them. We try to cover, because we call this place Life Recovery, right? Because life is messy, and I don't know anyone that doesn't have an addiction. In fact, even Dr. Leaf says we're designed to have an addiction to God. What do you think of those apples? So what we have is we in life recovery, we have to deal with those. But the trouble is, our human response to problems, discomfort, is to try to avoid, hide, numb, or deny the problem. You know what I'm talking about? Hello? Am I talking to anybody out there? The rest of you are liars. How about that? If you want, If you didn't have a trauma before, now you do, right? All right. So anyway, that was what John Bradshaw said. So I think I'm gonna say this last one, and then I'm gonna get off of it. I've been working on a book by Pete Walker, and the book is Complex PTSD, and it's been really good. But he said this, and I put this quote down. He says that one of his people put this on their bulletin board. He says alcohol and other drug recovery is like dealing with a tiger in a cage. Period. Recovery from eating disorder is like taking the tiger out of the cage 3 times a day and taking it for a walk. Right? Now that's specifically tied to eating disorder because we all have to eat and that there is some conflict there. But the fact of it is, I think it holds a lot of truth to all forms of addiction because they're all around us all the time. And they're pushing on us. You know what I'm talking about? Hello? Hello. And so we are, to some degree, walking with our addictions because they want to talk to us. Anybody here have some of their addictions talk to them? Yes, it does. And it's how you respond to that is so important. What does that mean? If you deny they're talking to you, then resistance draws it to you. Have you ever heard that? So you have to deal with it. And you have to change that impulse. And well, hopefully I talk a little bit about that later on tonight. But we have to be willing to recognize, deal with it, and decide what we want in our life. In other words, what's your personal value that you want in your life? That's a question. You don't have to answer that. Just think about it. What's your personal values that you have in your life? Now, I just had this question come up to my mind. And what are issues that push us around our addictions? Do those addictions interrupt or affect our values that we desire to have in our life? What do you think? Anybody have any comments? Okay. All right. Did it cool down in here? Because I'm a lot hotter. Anyway, okay, I think we'll go ahead and get going here. So, Heather, you're going to read us the 12 steps. Do you have the paper, or do you want? We got one right here if you need it. Everybody, welcome Heather.
Hello. All right, so we're just reading
Just the steps.
just the steps, okay. All right, we admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives had.
Get to the mic because I can't hear you.
Okay. We admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives had become unmanageable. We came to
Look like you're straining.
We came to believe that a power that greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, we made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Thank you.
Rick, you're up.
How's everybody doing tonight? Good. Good to see you too, buddy. Alright, well, I'm gonna be going over step 2 here a little bit. We'll be in Romans going from 18:20. Says, but God shows his anger from heaven against all sinful, wicked people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. They know the truth about God because he has made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and the sky through everything God made. They can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature. So they have no excuse for knowing God. And I've always in the past had a problem with accepting that there was, a power that I could not see, I could not touch. But in all reality, we can touch these things, we can see these things, and all of us that's sitting around here. God created us all. God created everything around us. So he's made his power known to us. I'm gonna read this little side note right here because I like this so much. Saying that we came to believe suggests a process. Belief is the result of consideration, doubt, reasoning, and concluding. The ability to form beliefs is part of what it means to be made in God's image. It involves emotion and logic. It leads to action. What then is the process that leads us to a solid belief and changes our lives? We start with our own experiences and we see what doesn't work. Looking at the condition of our lives, we realize that we don't have enough power to overcome our dependencies. We try with all our might, but to no avail. When we are quiet enough to listen, we hear that still, small voice inside us saying, there is a powerful God, and he is able and willing to help us. The Apostle Paul said it this way, the people who need God, know the truth about God because he has made it obvious to them. And this next part right here, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to add to the 12 steps in no way, shape, or form, but I've always kind of thought they should have been a 0 step before the first step, because in order for me to get to step 1 and then to step 2, I have to first recognize that I have these addictions, that I am insane, in order for me to get to where that I could receive help. And then when I read this today, it just kind of verified that for me. It says, recognizing our internal weakness is the first step to recovery. When we look beyond ourselves, we see that there are others who have struggled with addictions and recovery. We know that they too are unable to heal themselves, yet they now live free of addictive behavior. We conclude that there must be a greater power that helped them. Since we can see similarities between their struggles and our own, we come to believe that our powerful God can restore us to sanity. This is where many people are when they get to step two. It is a good place to be on the way to recovery. And, I'm gonna read a couple questions out of this book here and try to answer them to the best of my ability, which shouldn't be too hard. Especially this first one right here, I know all too much about.
Willie will help you if you need some help.
Huh?
Willie will help you if you need some
Willie, will you help me if I need some help?
help. Gotcha.
All right, buddy, I knew I could count on you. How have my experiences shown me that my way of living is not a satisfying or productive way to live? Loss of friends, family. I could go on, the list goes on and on and on. It's all loss. But number one is the loss of my self-respect, which I've done many, many, many times. And, number two here, I like this question here too, is how have I seen God's power at work in people's lives? And I have a few friends that I can actually call friends that I can count on one hand, that I've seen God working in their lives and I've seen them being restored. The main one that comes to my mind, I won't call no name, but he's on his way to 30 years of sobriety. And, he did it with the power of God. And I truly believe in this step. I come to believe that a power greater than myself could restore myself to sanity. Thank you.
Good, Rick, thanks.
That was good. As long as we can realize what we're doing wrong and that under our own power, we have no power to change it, but we need to let God in and let Him take over control, because when we control things, they go awry. But when God controls things, they go good. So as long as we will submit control to our higher power, we will be on the right road to recovery. We may slip up every once in a while. In fact, we will slip up every once in a while. But God is always there. He never moves, and He never changes. And He's always there for us to help us back up on our feet. Thank you very much.
Hey, John, got a question?
Yes.
So how do we submit to his authority or power or guidance? Or how do you? How's that question?
By realizing that I've got off the path. I realize that I pray continually. I keep in prayer. I do the best I can do, and if I slip up, I pick myself back up and go back at it again.
So how do you know if you're not submitting or in alignment with his will?
I have you for that, Doug.
You're doing the reflection.
People will tell me that they don't think people will let me know that I'm not, they think I'm not on the right path, and normally when people see things in you, they see things in you you don't see in yourself. And just need to pay attention to them and pay attention to God, and God will lead you back to the right path.
How's he do that?
Through,
John?
for me, just he gently nudges me, reminds me that I've got to get back on the right path to sanity and sobriety, and he gets me in the Bible and scriptures and leads me around people that are of a sober mind and sober spirit and helps me back on the path.
It's good, John. Thanks.
I like to come up here when I talk for a little bit, hope that's all right. Did it cool down in here, or am I just cooling down?
Yes, cool down.
Oh, yeah, well, it feels a little bit better. All right, to be honest with you, John, now, I want to hear your response there. As a good diversionary tactic there, to try to push it back on me. And I just,
I'm just saying, that you are one of my people leading me back in the path.
well, thank you for that. But just like all of us, most of us probably in this room, now I don't know everybody in this room, but most of us are probably of the persuasion of being, I'm trying to find a tactful way of saying it, but let's just say it this way, maybe a little more hard-headed than some people. More persistent, determined, and so, that's not a bad thing. Okay, that can be a good thing when it's bent in the right direction, right? Hello, right? Bent in the right direction. And so when I asked that question about how does God lead John? Well, how does he lead me? How does he lead you? Before I answer it, anybody want to say, how does God get your attention, or how does he prompt you that you need to make a correction? Anybody want to share?
I feel it inside. I know when I'm not doing right.
Okay. So you know when you're not doing right, but something about inside. I missed the first part of that.
Inside of me, I know right from wrong, and I know
Yes.
that inner peace, and if I lose that peace.
All right, peace, that peace that passes understanding, and you have that, keep your heart and your mind, yes. All right, yes, Rick?
I think, for me, a lot of it, when I feel God's presence telling me that I need to change direction, repent, turn around, is when I feel the guilt and the shame of what I'm doing.
Okay. Yes, all right. Yes, sir.
I think for me, it's when things start going wrong and I start getting into stuff I shouldn't be getting into.
That's when the red lights start showing up, or, yeah?
Well, hopefully before that.
Oh, before that. Yeah. Well, and back to that persistence, you kind of set me up for this, but that persistence or determined or hard-headedness, to the degree that there's a scripture that talks about that it talks about searing the conscience with hot iron. Anybody familiar with that scripture? And that means that we have lost some of the sensitivity. Anybody here know what I'm talking about? Losing some of the sensitivity, like you was talking about being sensitive. And so when we lose that sensitivity, then that means we've missed the first several. Hey, you need to change. You need to correct. You're on the wrong path. And then the next thing you know, you start hitting situations that are more troublesome. And if we just decide to bull our way on through, which we've all been there to some degree, right? Then then the next thing you know, we take ourselves further and further away from his guidance and his protection, and it causes us to be more susceptible to rougher and rougher places. Is that a reasonable scenario? Right? Anybody else want to share how how you get, are able to have that connection to God, so you know when you need to make some correction. Anybody else?
Well, I was wanting to talk about the submitting part.
Okay.
Because I'm not a monk. I live in the world. Every time I step out into the world, I'm not literally submitted to God. If I was able to not, be out there like, I don't know how to explain it. Once I get out into the world, I'm in the world, I'm doing things that, there are all kinds of opportunities to do things that are not of God.
Right?
So I can't stay totally submitted to God. It's kind of like Paul said, the things I don't want to do, I do. The things I don't want to do, I don't do. Or however he says that.
Yes, I understand.
So I get
Romans
out there.
chapter 8,
I get out there in the world, I'm doing things.
chapter 7,
I'm
excuse
not
me.
submitted to God, but I still love him in my heart. But I guess the things that kind of turn me around are, I guess, a tug in my chest.
Okay,
The Holy Spirit
all right.
convicts me,
Mm-hmm,
or chastens me.
mm-hmm,
And it has that effect, especially like when using, if I was to use and keep using, it sears in my brain. I just kind of cut off the Holy Spirit and just go on using. Once I got clean, my connection, I don't know, it got tighter again.
okay, good.
So, and I didn't want to lose that connection. Oh God, don't take my Holy Spirit from me. I
Right.
guess, I'm not saying my salvation, but my Holy Spirit, like I want to keep my connection tight. I don't want to have a seared conscience.
Right. I want to do what my flesh wants to do, but I don't want to be separated from God.
Right.
How'd that work out for you?
It doesn't work out all that great.
Yeah, okay. So that means we have to make some healthier choices, wouldn't you agree?
Right.
So that goes back to that value statement that I mentioned a while ago. What is your life values? What do you want to have in your life? Do we want to have pleasures? And there's nothing wrong with pleasures unless they are toxic pleasures, right? And trouble is, that's what got most of us in the place that we were at, right?
Right.
So what we have to do is to have those toxic pleasures, that takes us away from those values that we have,
Yeah.
or that we want to have, or we'd like to have, or we believe we should have. So,
Right.
anybody else? So, I don't think there is, so I didn't he didn't choked up on me, so. So anyway, we have, my answer here is, and I want to go back to what Heather said here, that I believe we all know right from wrong. It's just what choices we convince ourselves that is okay to make. And the more of those we make, we tell ourselves, or we sell ourselves the lie that we got away with it this time, and so we should be able to get away with it next time, right? But sometimes the next time doesn't work out so well, right? But each time we do that, we go further and further away from what we say is our real core values, what we really want in our life. In other words, we're selling off pieces of ourselves. But we're not really aware of that. Because it kind of reminds me of Esau and Jacob, where, was it Esau and Jacob? Where he came in and he wanted a bowl of soup. And, huh?
Sold his birthright for a bowl of soup.
Yeah, sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. Because it didn't seem to be a lot of worth to him at that moment, because he was hungry. Right? So he fed his stomach, but he affected his future. Nobody here's ever done that, right? So what we have, and that's what recovery meetings, and hopefully Saturday Night Live recovery meeting is about to help us to give us a chance to give us a breath of spiritual fresh air to help us to regain some stability and to rethink what I want to do and help to reset some of our thinking and our choices so that we can do that. Now, the trouble is, yes, we're going to make some wrong choices, but when we know we've done wrong, that's when we need to try to take action to set it right. When we mess up, we need to clean up. Put it in a different way, right? When we mess up, we need to clean up. A lot of people like to mess up, but they don't like to do the cleanup, right? But when we start to learn to do the cleanup, we begin to see the devastation of the mess up. Does that make sense? That's not too harsh, is it? I think it's kind of real, to tell you the truth. You know, like you saying, Rick, and it was really good on your step, that what has those past experiences basically cost me? You know, what have I experienced? And at the time, it wasn't all that big deal because it wasn't, didn't, what you wanted wasn't what you were giving up, right? Right? But somewhere down the line, we have to realize, wait a minute, what we gave up was very important. It's important to me. Now, I want to factor in here, sometimes in our insanity, because that would have been definitely an act of insanity. Wouldn't you agree with that? And when we're insane, that means we're not thinking right. And we're being driven by emotional pain, physical pain, or I want to say, fear, and that can grab a hold of us and take us. That's not an excuse. That's just a statement of potential fact, and that means we have to be willing to come back to that point of recognizing our values and choosing, I want this in my life. I choose this in my life. And every time the old situations that come up or present themselves, people and supposedly friends, situations, how many times have I heard people say, when I decided to stop using dope, then I walked out of the store and there it was laying on the sidewalk. Or I had one guy said they threw it in my front yard. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I decided to stop drinking myself, no one had ever offered to give me anything until I decided to quit. And that's the truth. And that's the way it is in a lot of situations. I wonder what's behind that. You got any ideas?
Something that you may not like.
What's that?
Would you reach in there and find something that you may not like?
Yeah. Well, it's not really good for us anyway, right? So, any comments before I go on? You have something you
Well,
want
I've
to say?
heard somebody say not everything's the devil, but I'd like to say a lot of it is.
Well, well, like Apostle Paul said, what you refer to out of Romans chapter 7, that I would do, I don't do. So we know, and that I do, I don't want to do. O wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? And we have this going on, and we know inside. And the trouble is, ever since Adam and Eve, they knew what they weren't supposed to do, but they ended up doing it anyway, right? And they had a relationship with God that none of us I'm thinking that probably none of us has been able to experience as of yet, all right? And it amazes me a little bit how they decided to run from God instead of go to God. Does that make any, you understand what I'm saying? And all of mankind has been doing that ever since, trying to hide. And isn't that what the addictions are about, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, rage, violence, cutting, it's all a avoidance technique to escape this reality into something else. Instead of dealing with it, and I grant you, when some of this, a lot of this starts in early childhood, when nobody has strength to deal with things in a healthy way. They just have to survive. So congratulations, you all survived. You're survivors, okay? And that kind of goes back to my title is from what was my title? From surviving to thriving. And so, we have to survive. And we need to, when we have less power, you find whatever will work. But the trouble is, when we're young and we find something that works, then we use it for everything, right? How many people have told me, well, they started me on pills when I was 6 or 7, and I started drinking about the same age, and then I started smoking before I was 12. And you don't have any, and that's the way you're trying to deal with your emotional dysregulation is through these means, and so you really don't have any personal coping skills. But when it starts taking your life away from you, which it does that very early and you don't recognize it, would you agree with that statement? And then when you finally get to the place, and how many times have I heard this? I'm about to die. And I've heard that many times. And so we kind of like what we talked about in step 1. We finally, King Nebuchadnezzar, finally came to himself and made a change. And that's really good when we can come to ourselves and make a change. So, any comments before I move on? I like this one statement that's made here in the 4 steps to start living your life in process. And process is so important because it's not just one and done. It's an ongoing development process. Has anybody ever went through you had a sickness and then you went through a healing process? Nobody was healed overnight, right? It comes a little bit at a time. Let me ask you a question. Was healing painful for you?
Yep.
Isn't all healing painful?
Yep.
But it's healthy, right? And we're willing to deal with that pain of healing. Are we not? And so, whether that's physical or emotional, okay? I say this all the time to folks, and sometimes it's hard to understand. Oftentimes, it feels worse as things are getting better. Okay? That's in all forms, even in physical healing. Like a cold, you're sick and you have a fever, you feel not good, but when the fever breaks, that means the infection or the virus has been dealt with. Now your body purges everything, and actually the purging process, the cleaning up of your body oftentimes feels worse than when you had the sickness, right? I wonder if that ties in with our recovery process. I wonder if it ties in cleaning up our life process. I wonder if it has anything to do with our relationship process. You know, cleaning things up sometimes is hard, but it's healthy. It's important. You know, what we mess up, we need to clean up. Have you heard that before? I know you have, because I just said it earlier. Sometimes I just crack myself up. What can I say? Okay. Anybody familiar with a labyrinth? That is, sometimes you have seen them like in England, where they make them out of hedges. We oftentimes around here, we call them mazes, but there's a difference between a maze and a labyrinth. A labyrinth, they say, is you can make your way through a labyrinth if you continue to keep walking forward, because eventually it will lead you to the center. But you have to keep walking forward. Now, a maze has dead ends in it. Okay? Now, if you get twisted up in either one of them, you can end back up where you started, right? Yep. And that kind of reminds us of a recovery process, right? Sometimes we get going and then we think I'm back at that same spot. But you know, just because it feels like we're there, that doesn't necessarily mean we are in that exact spot, because you've learned some things. You've grown, okay? And maybe it's just an opportunity for you to deepen or embed those things that you've already learned. In other words, put them to work, practice them, do it again. Does that make sense? I mean, if you've ever played sports, they have you do the same practice routine over and over and over and over, right? Wonder why they do that.
So it gets ingrained into your mind.
Yep. So it gets embedded into your non-conscious.
Gets to be seconds of breathing.
Right, where you don't even have to think about it. You're just able to make those healthy reactions. Okay. The importance of focusing on the process is the importance for focusing on the processes for positive change. And this, one of the points that I want to make sure that I cover correctly here, and that is that if we can focus on not just the outcome, but the process that's going on. In other words, if I can focus on the learning, all right, most of us grow up with the idea it's about the outcome. It's about the bottom line. It's about the finished product. It's about getting the job done, and that's it. But for most of life, and with recovery, it's about the process. It's about the journey. It's what you get along the way. Does that make sense? And I have had a bad habit a lot of my life, is just focusing on the outcome. They say smell the roses. My wife tells me that all the time. Look at the trees. Okay, all right. But I'm usually focused on what I got to do. But she's right. Okay. Now the trouble is, I'm colorblind, so what trees I see is not the same thing that she sees. So it's a little bit different. But she's right. Linda, you're right. I'm talking to my wife there.
get saved.
Yeah. And, cause you're always right. I don't know, I had a funny feeling when I said that. Anyway, mostly she's always right. How about that? That's probably, so anyway. So here's some key points about this topic. And that is, some psychologists believe that mental illness should be treated not with individual protocols, but with underlying processes that promote change. What does that mean? To me, what that means is that they're saying that most psychologists says that everybody is unique and not one size fits all. Does that make sense? On some of the protocols. And oftentimes we like to use systems that somebody has created and that we follow the system and we think that should take care of the problem. And the trouble is, medical doctors, MDs, they refer to them as practicing medicine, right? So, and a good doctor is one that has had a lot of experiences and know they have an idea of what works best in certain conditions. Not just what the reps say, but what they have experienced in their own behalf. So that's process. Does that make sense? Okay. Another key point is focus on process over outcome can help people become more present and adaptable. Okay. The idea here is that we need to focus, and which I've pretty much already talked about, we need to focus on the process. See, because if we're focused on the outcome, then it's all about the end. But the thing of it is, there's a lot of stuff that happens. And I don't know if I'll get to it tonight, but if we can, that's the reason why when people come to me and they say they've relapsed or messed up, or they use the other various terms, and I ask them, well, what did you learn? Have you ever heard me say that? Or maybe have I ever said that to you? You don't have to answer that. But what did you learn? What have we learned here? What did you learn here? What did you get out of that experience? Or some variation of that. And what I'm trying to do is focus on the process. Not just that you did something wrong, but we learn from that process. And that you have some benefit from that process, because if it's all about a particular outcome, then you sometimes you can lose heart or give up because you don't have, you miss the benefits of the process along the way. Does that make sense? Okay, it's kind of like dieting. If you're dieting and the scales are not going down, you often says, well, if the scales are not going to go down, I'm just going to quit, right? That's a oftentimes normal reaction, right? But if you look at the process and say, well, my value is that this is what I think is good for me, that I need to do this for my health. It will affect my ability to enjoy life more, have better relationships, have a better health, and in the process should lose some weight too. And if those are your values, then you're able to focus on the process along the way to help you keep in your desired journey that you're on. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Does that make sense? Right. So focus on the process, not the outcome. okay? You're able to be more present and adaptable. Key point number 3 here is people can develop a process-based approach to life by tending to the moment at hand. Defining the big picture and savoring the journey. This is a very important point here, and that is that, again, this goes back to what I was kind of saying a while ago, is being in the moment, recognizing that right now, I choose to stay in the process, okay? Let's say, I don't know, I heard this illustration. I'm going to try to throw it out here, and it was talking about a lot of times if you tell people that you're dieting, sometimes, but not all the time, they'll want you to go ahead and say, well, you can cheat a little bit, right? But if you're in a situation where people are drinking or doing other things, and you say, and they offer to you, you say no, and they say, oh, come on, one won't hurt, right? Right? That happens. And the fact of it is, but if you were to say, I gotta be gluten free, or it messes me up bad to someone, oftentimes they recognize that and they appreciate that, and they won't shove a piece of bread in your mouth, right? Or try to get you to do something, and that's just kind of a weird way our society looks at things. Would you agree with that? So what we have to do is we have to make a healthy choice for ourselves. Wouldn't you agree? We have to learn what we can do and what we can't do. Particularly in recovery, we have to avoid people, places, and things, right? And you mean just early in recovery, after the first couple of days, and that's okay? Well, probably it's going to be a little longer than that, right? It may be way longer than that. But the fact of it is, we have to make healthy choices for ourselves. And if your supposedly friends or acquaintances want to sabotage your life, then maybe you need to make some changes. Would you agree with that? Okay. Now, sometimes that's hard to see because you say, well, they're my friends. I got a lot invested in them. Yeah. That could be true. But the fact of it is, how much poison can you tolerate? Is that too hard of a statement? How much poison do you want to tolerate? An old statement came to my mind just then about, I can't pull it up. It has something to do with, I choose not to be around, it'll come to me maybe later. So anyway, it's been a long time since I've thought about that one. So anyway, those are, we need to identify the big picture. What is it you want to have in your life? And does this get me closer, or does it take me further away? What I often tell people when they're in the midst of a decision, I say, play the movie forward. See where it takes you, right? How many of you have that skill to play the movie forward? See, play that movie forward. Is that where you want to go? Is that where you want to end up? Then you need to change. You need to change the movie, right? And you have that power. Isn't that great? You get to focus on where you want to go. And whatever you focus on, get stronger and bigger. And you get to choose. You just need to make healthy choices. Is it easy? No! But it's healthy. Right? Am I telling the truth?
Yes.
Okay. How much of this? Oh, yeah. Does that say 8:15? Is that what that says? 8:14. Okay. AI 14 and a half. Okay. Anybody familiar with Carol Dwexler? She wrote a book on the growth mindset. Okay, growth mindset. She refers to is they did some research on smart kids and that they said that was smart. And they found out that smart kids, when they were doing things and they failed to live up to their expectations of being smart, they would give up because they were outcome based. All right, they were fixed mindset, okay, instead of growth mindset. And they had another group of kids that they reinforced with them that they were good, hard workers, okay? And they reinforced that they were hard workers. And they were working on the same problem that the smart kids were working on. But the kids that were, and I think this was some research done in England, and they continued to work on the problem when the smart kids quit, okay? Because they were reinforced with the process growth mindset to continue to keep working on it, because it wasn't just on getting the right answer, but it was about working hard on trying to find the answer. Does that make sense? And so what we have to do is not have a fixed mindset, according to Carolyn Dwexter, that she says we need to have a growth mindset, and that is that whatever the situation is, I can grow through this. Whatever the problem is, I can grow through this, okay? And oftentimes I say it about myself is I may not know the way, but I'll find the way. God and I will work this out, okay? I remember when my dad was dying, and some people called the hospital, and they said he had I think it was level 4 cancer or something like that, and basically he said he was terminal, and they said, well, what are you going to do? I don't know, it seemed like every phone call kept coming in and said, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I decided to tell him, we're just going to deal with it. We're just going to deal with it. And there was part of me that wanted to get mad for him asked that, but the fact of it was, maybe they were doing me a favor by helping me reinforce that we're just going to deal with it. And Dad lived about another 9-10 months, something like that, and which that was about 8 months more than they said he would. And so, but the fact of it is, we dealt with it. We dealt with it. We dealt with it. What else is there to do but to deal with the stuff that's in our life, right? Well, there is something else we can do. Is we can avoid, we can deny, we can zone out, we can hide, we can numb out, right? Okay. Now, I don't want to be too harsh here, but you know, we are designed this survival mechanism with our amygdala to try to avoid pain and seek pleasure. I get that. That's a survival technique. But the trouble is, if we stay in survival, we'll never thrive. Right? If we always avoid the hard stuff, then we never grow. We all want growth, we just don't want to deal with the pain. Am I getting closer? And so we have to be willing to step into the hard stuff and deal with it. That's what taking responsibility. That's what maturity is about. That's what cleaning up our side of the street's about. If we mess it up, we clean it up. That's what that's about. And that's tough stuff. But the fact of it is, as we begin to do that and practice that, has anybody here found that it does get easier? Okay? It does get easier. And as we grow, then our world begins to expand, because we shrunk it all the way down to almost nothing before. You know what I'm talking about? And we did that. I think maybe we did that unconsciously on purpose. So what we do is we take responsibility, and as we make healthy choices, our world begins to enlarge. And then we're able to start to live again. I had a woman one time that she told me, she said, when I went into the jail, all I saw was darkness all around. No color. She was in there for a while, she said, but when I walked out, at the same door she walked in, she was shocked because she could see color. The sky was blue. The grass was green. There was flowers in the courtyard. The clouds were white. And she was so shocked because she could see color. It wasn't because the outside changed. It was because she changed.
Her perspective changed.
There you go. And I had a person, I think it was just this week, said, you know, I'm getting better because I can start to see color now. You know, and that may sound really strange to you, but if you've been in a dark hole before, and that's not a concrete hole, okay, necessarily, but we're talking about figurative hole that you know, the darkness has squeezed in on you. But let it be known, the sun has always been up there, even though there's been a cloud over it. And that cloud, you can poke holes in that cloud, and you can start to let some sunlight in to your darkness. What do you think about that? So when old patterns start showing up in your life, you have a decision to make. You can say, you know, you can make choices to go with it. You can get angry and get mad about that. Or you can recognize it's an opportunity to deal with your stuff in your life, to make healthy choices. Okay? Now, being mad at it is better than going with it. But being angry is resisting, and what you resist persists. Okay? So, but dealing with it, recognizing it, and say, oh, I have some more work to do. This is not where I want to go. This is not what I want to be. My values are this. That does not line up with my values. And pulling into that helps us to be motivated for growth. Okay? We're talking about growth. And if you don't grow, then you don't change. And if you don't grow, then you're shrinking. You following what we talked about a while ago? Let me give you the four points. All right. The 4 points are this. Tend to the moment at hand. That's the most important moment you got, is to tend to the moment at hand. You gotta be in the present. Does that make sense? Okay? Point number 2, you try zooming out from your life to gain that perspective that you were mentioning a while ago. Broaden your perspective about what's going on. That my life is bigger than this little problem that's going on. It feels like a big problem, but if I back up far enough, I can gain a different perspective, and I can see that it's in the context of everything that's going on. It's a small problem, and we'll deal with it because your perspective has changed. And I like what Einstein said. He said that when he looked at the universe, the question was is the universe friendly to mankind? And he said when he looked at the universe, when he looked at everything that had to go right for life to exist, he concluded that the universe was created to be friendly to humankind. Because there's so much that has to go right. And there's so much that goes right in your life, even though you may be fixated on a problem right now. Does that make sense? Now, that means the problem's not important. Doesn't mean it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to control you. You need to back up, gain perspective, zoom out, so that you can have the ability to master the problem instead of the problem mastering you. Does that make sense? I know that's hard, but we got to start someplace, right? Okay. Number 3, look for themes. Okay. I say look for patterns. Okay. Look for how things things keep showing up and they keep coming the same way. I had a guy here a week or so ago that says, I don't understand. Seems like I've had 3 girlfriends and I don't understand, but all 3 of them are cutters. Why is that? He asked me. They're cutters. I said, well, that's kind of interesting. Sounds like a pattern. And they're different. And it has to do with you. So I can't go into the conversation, but I'm just saying, if there's a pattern that you keep having, then it has to do with something in you that needs to be resolved. Wouldn't you agree with that? Right? And you say, well, I just wish it would quit showing up. No, that's the wrong answer. The answer is you need to fix the problem. Right? You need to heal the issue. And when it's healed, it affects the dynamics of the universe. Because when you change, it affects everything. Right? Okay. Number 4, savor the journey. What does that mean, savor? Savor is to enjoy, to spend time with, taste it, feel it, enjoy it, be with it. Savor the journey. Enjoy it. And I remember Tal Ben Shahar. He's a professor. He was teaching at not Cambridge, but one of the Ivy colleges. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Harvard. There it is. Harvard. Everything's in there. It just takes a while for it to come up. And so he had this class that he was teaching at Harvard, and he kept talking about savoring the journey, and this was several years ago, and that's not a word that's been in my vocabulary, really. You know what I mean? And so I had a hard time connecting with it. But as I was studying this the last couple of days, I was looking at this savoring and enjoying and partaking and spending time with, being in the moment and smelling the roses, looking at the trees, enjoying the dogs playing in the yard or the grandkids fighting or whatever they're doing, savoring the moment that helps you to be in that, even in the midst of uncertainty. You're able to look into those things and find some things that you can savor. Another way of saying it is be grateful for. Gratefulness. Gratefulness changes us. It alters our brain. We're talking about trauma and how it affects our brain. Gratefulness will begin to heal some of that trauma. All right? And by the way, gratefulness is grateful for what you are truly thankful or grateful for, not pretending that you're grateful or trying to act like you or do or be grateful for something you think you should be grateful for, but you're really not. So it's authentic gratefulness, okay? It's not fake it till you make it, all right? Because fake it till you make it is lying to yourself. And lying to yourself causes disorder in you, okay? Does that make sense? All right. I had another little topic that I was going to hit. I'm just going to touch the three things real quick because I think they're really interesting. And that is 3 habits that will make you mentally strong. Interested?
Yeah.
All right. And I'm just going to hit the habits. Be honest about how you feel emotionally. Be honest to yourself. Be honest to yourself, how you really feel. We lie to ourselves so much that we deny our own feelings. Does that make sense? And when we do that, then we're training our brain to not to pay attention, to turn them off, or even beat us up when we have some. You follow me? Does any of that make sense? Number 2, resist unnecessary mental time travel. Okay? Resist unnecessary time travel. What does that mean? We time travel all the time. Do you know that? We look in the past, we look in the future. And oftentimes we spend more time in the past and the future than we do in the present time. Right? And a lot of that would be unnecessary. Now, not all that time travel is not unnecessary, because we can learn from the past. That would be necessary, learning. Or we can try to look into the future and see what things we can do. But you can increase your anxiety and worry about all kinds of things in the future, right? So there's appropriate time travel. But the trouble is, most of us spend too much time in that time travel that's unnecessary, or what some would call fantasy or denial, okay? Number 3, and we're talking about 3 habits that will make you mentally strong. Number 4 is distinguish wants from values. We've been talking a lot about that tonight already. What you want and what you value are not necessarily, it is not the same thing. What you want, sometimes what you want is not good stuff. And what you value is what you really want. And that's what Apostle Paul was talking about in Romans chapter 7, that I would do, I don't always do. I know when I miss the mark, I push towards the prize of the high calling of God, okay? That's where I want to go. But sometimes we all stumble, right? And if we know where we're going, then we continue to go there. But we can only do that when we recognize that's what I really, really want. The question is, what is it? What is your value? What is your life value? What is it that you really, really want? And if you can focus on what you really, really want, your reticular activating system that you have in your brain will go to work for you and help you to get it. But I caution you, make sure what you want is healthy and lines up with your values. Questions?
I just had a statement about process. I've noticed that as times went on that I've been clean, I've had more people outside of me tell me about my progress than I've noticed about it. Like, I feel like I'm not making any progress, I'm just not using it. But my life is different. things, goals I've knocked down and all the things that I can't really see those, but the people around me have noticed, like, hey, you're really starting to really tear shit up, you know, I'm sorry about that, but, you know, you're really doing good, and I'm like, nah, really, you know, and they're like, yeah, good for you, you know, and I'm like, okay, well, I just thought I wasn't using here, you know.
And that happens to all of us, because that means you are making some changes, and you have some process going on, and congratulations, and you need to listen to them and recognize that. And the trouble is, sometimes we ignore our progress, okay? Because there's a part of us that thinks it's all got to be painful and hard, okay? But that's not necessarily true, okay? And sometimes if we just let ourselves be, then things start to happen in our life. And so recognize that, and when they compliment you, say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And mark it down mentally, emotionally, okay? I'm not sure what they're seeing, but they're seeing something, right? So mark it down for yourself.
She said you don't see it, right?
Right.
When we're using, all we're doing is spinning the wheels, and that's what we're used to. When we get straight, we don't use, every day you don't use your progress, man.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
good job, bro.
every day. And the fact of it is, when we're using or acting out, we are in a disordered state. And we are not even conscious. Our brain shuts down particular areas of our brain. We're not able to even think. We're only reacting, okay, to survive, to deal with the threats. And if we're dealing with some drugs, everything's a threat. And but now you're starting to have clarity, and so you are not sure what's going on, okay? But and it can even feel irritating because you're probably been used to chaos, and now it may start to be a little more peaceful. But it's after 8:30, and we need to go, and you gotta go. See ya. Thanks for your help. And any other questions?
God bless, man.
See ya. All right. May the Lord bless you, keep you. May his face shine upon you and give you his peace. And make healthy choices.